Hello, everybody. My name is Micah. I'll be your astrologer for today. And today we are diving into Midas in Aquarius. We have done Midas from Taurus all the way to Aquarius. And so if you have your Midas sign in any other sign other than Aquarius, then that video has already been made, except for Midas in Pisces and Midas in Aries. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that we already have done 10 out of the 12 signs in Midas. We're almost done with this series. Let's go ahead and jump into Midas and Aquarius. But before we go ahead and do that, let's kind of review a little bit what Midas is about. Midas is an asteroid in astrology that you can find under asteroid 1981, I do believe, in any sort of like directory. When you're going on to like birth chart calculators, you can find Midas by typing in asteroid 1981. I do believe that's Midas, or you can just manually search it. But Midas is Midas in Aquarius, or sorry, Midas as an asteroid. It has a lot to do with the myth of Midas and King Midas. It is where you have the golden touch in astrology, where you might find a lot of fortune, fame, and recognition. It is definitely one of the wealth or fortune labeled asteroids, but it doesn't always have to be about money. Like I said, it can be about, it can be about just recognition from other people and where you really shine. Now, just like any other planet, Midas does have a dark side, and just like any other asteroid, it does have a dark side as well as a flip side. And so when Midas is not balanced, we can see its shadow side. And so we see this in the myth of King Midas when, yes, he had the golden touch. He was able to fund all these things that he needed for his kingdom. But the other side of prosperity is greed. And so when there's too much happening, too much going on, and things aren't in balance, we see what happened with King Midas, where he was no longer able to eat or touch his food. He had to basically change his whole life around. And I do believe he had to like wear gloves so that and even those gloves turned to gold, because he wasn't able to eat food. And the minute he touched his food or the things that he needed for sustenance, those would turn into food and became inedible. And he also ended up turning his own daughter, who he loved very much, into gold as well. And so we can see the light and dark side of Midas in astrology as well. And so today in this video, we'll be talking about the light side of Midas, the dark side of Midas, plus a little bit, like a couple traits that you might want to also know about Midas and Aquarius and people with those placements, as well as some fields that these people usually do very well in, or that they can be found in because of this energy. And so I have my handy dandy notes here just to keep us on track. And so let's go ahead and get into some of before we get into like the light and dark side, um, let's kind of do like an overview of Aquarius energy. Aquarius energy is very much about individuality as well as really pulling on community. It is very technical, sciencey, very future and forward thinking. And so a lot of times people with Midas and Aquarius thrive in these kinds of situations where Aquarius energy is already really blooming at, and it's doing its thing. And so the light side, I guess, of Midas and Aquarius is going to be that these people are really good at connecting ideas, people, and resources across a lot of different fields and just areas in general. They're able to kind of piece things together. I can't like think of like the name of people that do this, but like where they just kind of like know everybody. And so if you need something, they probably be really good event planners, to be fair, but I know that event planners aren't always event planners, but like they're those people that just kind of know everybody. And so if you needed a project done, they could call up like maybe a scientist with like a construction worker, and maybe in like somebody else in like and somebody, they know somebody in like interior design, and they could get a house built for you. But they know all of those people. And so they're able to not only have the ideas, but also they know the people that can help them kind of get it working and get you the final result. Something else that we can see is that these people are really good at being able to innovate, or maybe even like bring up to speed or like modernize outdated systems, especially like when I think about like tech and like more sciencey kind of fields. Um, like I think somewhere else that we could find this outside of tech would just be with like humanitarian work as well, and like outreach and maybe even marketing too. um, these people are naturally very humanitarian like oriented, and they can definitely be visionaries, like very altruistic kind of people, um, and they can use that success that they find through those strengths to really lift up other people. Something else that Midas and Aquarius does really well is that they're visionaries, and Aquarius is a lot about independence, and so a lot of times these people will be consultants. They don't really work for like anybody else, but they are, because of like that ability to just kind of work on their own and also connect with other people. They're very open-minded. Because they just meet so many different kinds of people from walks of life and different perspectives. I think that adds to that like kind of limitless reach, and so they're able, because of that, to really, and they're really good at spotting opportunities that maybe other people might miss. Um, and this, I think, really inspires a lot of loyalty and admiration, and respect, even from people around them, like colleagues, friends, even romantic partners. I could see Midas and Aquarius, they do really well in that aspect. All right, so before we get into the shadow side of Midas and Aquarius, let's talk a little bit about some of my favorite things about these people. Aquarius, we were talking a little bit earlier about how Aquarius is like so well connected. Um, and a lot of times, because Aquarius energy is so well connected and has kind of branched out so much in different fields and people of different walks of life. Part of how they get that is because of this kind of magnetic kind of nature, and because they shine so differently than everybody else. Um, Midas and Aquarius really brings that out because these people are often very quirky, eccentric, or just kind of like unconventional in their like kind of personal style or approach to things. And so it's kind of like a breath of fresh air when people meet these people. And we have to remember, like, if we were going to put together some sort of like fusion of planets together that would create Midas, the asteroid Midas's vibe, then we would put together Venus, Jupiter, and Pluto. Venus and Pluto in particular are going to make that magnetic pull for Midas in Aquarius. And so a lot of that is coming from like that they're just different. They don't think the way that other people do, and they don't usually approach things the way that other people do. And we can see that they really enjoy like connection with other people because it expands their own mind and way of looking at the world, and like being more open-minded and like with all those perspectives. So it's kind of like these people are always like gathering data that they can kind of sit with and put their own spin on and think about after like, obviously after like a lot of thought, and then that is what kind of adds to, and then they are able to execute it in the right ways at the right time at their best. And that is what really pulls people in with these with people with displacement. And so they can really have a love for learning, new diverse perspectives and exploring new technologies, philosophies, belief systems, all of those kinds of things. Um, Something else I would say with Midas in Aquarius is that these people are really good about like being trendsetters. Like these are going to be the people that know the underground, like the unknown underground speakeasy, or like the best place to go get like tacos in the city that nobody else has like discovered yet, or like the best ice cream place. I'm making myself hungry just thinking about it. But like these are the trendsetters. So before it hits Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, these people are going to either know the people or the places that are hot. And so if you want to also be in on that, make sure you have somebody with Midas and Aquarius, or like sometimes just Aquarius energy. They're the ultimate hipsters of the Midas world or zodiac in general. And sometimes they'll even get a little crotchety when those places, people, or things like become mainstream, because they're like, I knew it before it was cool kind of situations. But that's also why these people are also just very well connected, because even when those people or places become mainstream, they've already created relationships with the people around those people, or the people that are in that establishment. And so they are very much rooted on a foundational level, which is very Saturn like of them. To those things before they became big. Um, these people can also have like unusual hobbies and side projects. Aquarius is the ultimate DIYer. And a lot of times these like DIY projects can become unexpected sources of income. We were talking a little bit about how Aquarius is the ultimate contractor or like consultant. And a lot of these come from just kind of like their own interest, or the ways of them making money come through their own interest. Excuse me. And so that is, I think, everything that I wanted to say about kind of Midas and Aquarius, as far as like just some fun facts about them, or some fun traits to know about them. But let's go ahead and get into the shadow side of Midas and Aquarius. So a lot of times with these people, we can see them become like emotionally detached when Midas and Aquarius placements are not balanced. And they can prioritize achievements or networks over personal connection. And so essentially what I'm saying is that like um, they can become a little bit like the shadow side of Midas and Leo, where I was talking about they can really seek external validation, but it's kind of like with a twist. They can become a little bit more opportunistic, and where they always have a motive when it comes to connecting with people rather than just enjoying the connection. So it's no longer about like wanting to discover or explore or learn. It's about like, what can this person give me? Or what opportunities could I get from learning this? It becomes something much more heavy and much more taxing, and just kind of flat and dimensionless. Um, and so we can also see that that this ironically creates some sort of like dependence on how other people view them, which is something that Aquarius energy usually is not for. But there can be too much of a focus on like, well, don't you see how important I am? Or don't you see how different and like quirky I am? Like, which can come off very poser like ish. And so that's definitely something that we can see. But also, I think one of the biggest parts of Aquarius, because Aquarius is simultaneously about individualism and just being unique, as well as community, a lot of times these people are very well connected. However, they can feel very lonely at the top, and sometimes they can get a little broody and just feel like, they're surrounded by people, but they feel alone, like very misunderstood. And a lot of times this can be true, genuinely true. They can surround themselves with people that just don't get their depth and things like that. But a lot of times this is also self-inflicted, is that they feel like just nobody gets them, and they just haven't tried to connect with anybody, and they've detached and like dissociated so much that they're just like, that they make themselves lonely. They isolate themselves way too much. And so we can also see a tendency to want to like over control situations, or like fix things and people. And a lot of times that can like go into like overstepping territory, and make people kind of push them away as well. Like, think about if somebody were doing that to you, how that would come off. It would make you most likely feel broken. It would also make that person look like they feel like they know everything they're talking about, like they're on their high horse and they're just so above you. And a lot of times that's what like Midas and Aquarius is like energy can lend itself to, is that it's just too much of that. It becomes too much of a fixer, which I always think is so interesting that Virgo gets, a bad rap for wanting to fix things so often. And also a reason why I feel like Midas or not Midas, Aquarius and Virgo actually have a lot in common, and that also might be why they're also so so incompatible, is because they actually do have quite a bit in common. Both of them want to be of service, and both of them can have a tendency to want to nitpick and criticize, or sometimes even be cruel because they feel that they know best. But with Midas and Aquarius, there can become this like almost omnipotent God complex where they separate themselves from just kind of the human experience, and they're like almost in their mind subconsciously like the overseer, and so they're always trying to like fix things, which can lead into a bit of manipulation as well if they're not careful. um but we can also see that they risk, feeling misunderstood, even with widespread success. And so they just want to be very mindful of that because these people are so well connected in everything that they do. And so it would just be a shame for all of that to be wasted. But let's talk a little bit about where these people excel when it comes to work. These people oftentimes do really well in a couple things. And we've already talked about like consulting and independent work. And that's kind of like a more general, like, work field. But let's talk about like where they might find what specialties might they have, like within that scope, or even if they do decide to work for somebody else, because I'm not saying that they can't work for somebody else, or that they never do. But let's talk about like some fields of work that they might get into, with Midas and Aquarius as a placement. Excuse me. Um, they might obviously be in like humanitarian fields, or like more leaning towards like leading projects, or like project managers, fundraising, like nonprofit organizations, I think is a big one for Midas and Aquarius. They'd be really good with like like creating like startup companies, or just being the idea bank for like startup companies, even like creating apps and things like that. Advertising, I could see like marketing, especially with like bringing certain ideas up to speed, or like being able to kind of predict where a market is going, so therefore being able to market for that before anybody else gets on it. um, these people can obviously be very creative, and so I'd say like, they could be great producers. I would say like music is something that I could definitely see, but I not saying that they can't be like singers or anything like that. But what I do think, because Aquarius is very artsy, but what I do think is that like because of like that technical aspect, I could totally see them being like producers rather than the actual artists. If they are singers, then I could also see them producing their own stuff, because again, Aquarius is the ultimate DIYer. Which brings me to that they could also be great influencers. Aquarius is the sign that has a lot to do with social media. And so, with that marketing and just kind of understanding where things are going, it would not surprise me that they'd be the face of something, or that they would be influencing and inspiring people to buy something, to do something, whatever. They could also be great inspirational speakers as well if they decide not to do the influencer route. They're just great at sparking some sort of light in others. Um, they can definitely fall into networking heavy roles such as PR, talent, and community building. Something else that we can see is like maybe like going into like that techie kind of field, working with AI. That has Midas and Aquarius written all over it. I think about the company Oracle, or the entity Oracle, because it feels weird because Oracle is so large to think of it as a company. But working in like AI or robotics, space exploration, especially, I think Midas and Aquarius would definitely be in, and they do well in as well. Um, any sort of like mentoring, I think I could also see again because it's about like expanding the mind. But I think that's about everything that I have in my notes as far as Midas and Aquarius. But let me know, do you have Midas and Aquarius? Do you have friends that are Midas and Aquarius? Do they work in any of the fields that we listed off? And do you see any of the traits that we talked about today that they are expressing? But other than that, guys, I will talk to you in the next one. Bye.